Good Thursday morning. Happy opening day. You've got baseball in the Bronx. You got the Mets down in Miami. Yes, it's going to be 42 degrees at first pitch at Yankee Stadium. A real feel in the 30s, but who cares? You bundle up, you have a couple of beers, you stuff your face, and you root your team on for another season that hopefully ends in joy this year. The last time we saw these teams, it was disappointment, but they did have a really, really fun regular seasons. But that's not what counts in New York, does it, Boomer? For the Yankees, it's always been ending in a championship. For the Mets now with Steve Cohen and the payroll, it has to be ending in a championship or at least getting to a World Series. But right now, hope springs eternal. So no negativity today, right? Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Try to keep it positive today, will you please?
All
I
right.
know that you're down on the Mets. Yeah. But I will say this, that with the Yankees starting at 105 today over at the stadium, Anthony Volpe, everybody's going to be watching this kid. Local kid, great story, deserves to be here, earned earned all of it, I should say, as both Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman have said over the last 10 days or so, that the kid is basically, I don't want to say shocked the world, but went out and did exactly what the people who know him expected him to do. Like, the people who know him know how great of a baseball player he is. We don't know him. We hope for the best.
Yeah.
But I have to say, for a player, this is like when Judge came up. Maybe it's a little bit like when Gary Sanchez came up, when Derek Jeter came up, and, when they finally found Mariano Rivera and what he turned into. This is what spring training is all about, but then opening day is all about. It's all about hope. It's all about the excitement of a young player feeling the pressure that these young kids these days don't even realize. And I see that all across sports. Like, Anthony Volpe expects to be here. Yeah, it's exciting, and you never know if you're going to make it because you're really not sure whether or not you have what it takes to make it. But everything that we've seen from him in spring training, everything that's been written about him, he is really he's like Jeter-esque in a sense that he's got a calmness about him.
Yes, and Derek Jeter tweeted at him yesterday saying there's nothing better than being the starting shortstop for the New York Yankees. And Brian Cashman really was banking on Anthony Volpe. I know part of it has to do with the money and not wanting to spend and go over the luxury tax, but they passed on a lot of options at shortstop over the last couple of years that they could have either traded for or they could have brought in on free agent deals. Manny Machado, Lindor, you had Carlos Correa, of course, and they stayed away from all of those options, and they bring in for a stopgap Isaiah kind of Falefa last year, hoping that Volpe would do this, and he did. Yeah. He took the job. But, of course, we need to see him now put together a big regular season. But this Yankee organization has been banking on this guy being the starting shortstop, and now's his time to prove it to him.
Well, they need to develop their own players, and he just like Aaron Judge is one of their own players. So you want this kid to come out here and look. These kids don't even know pressure anymore. They really don't. I mean, I remember back when I was 22, 23 years old, starting in an NFL game, I about pooped myself. It's like, wow, I couldn't believe that I was actually out there, and looking at all those guys and thinking that, man, there are a lot of 30-year-olds, 33-year-olds out here ready to kick my ass.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, that's a grown man right there.
It's like this is a grown man league. You hear that all the time.
Right.
But, nowadays, when you take a look at just look at the kids across the board. I mean, R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley and Quentin Grimes. And then you take a look at in the hockey world and you look at Jack Hughes, you look at Nico Hischier, you look at Filipino, who just got a new contract, and Capo Caco. These kids all started when they were 18 and 19 at the major level.
Sure.
In their sport, their respective sport. And it's so hard to fathom that. And you think about like LeBron, and Kobe coming out of high school.
Yeah, right, of course.
It's ridiculous that these kids nowadays, especially nowadays more so than those days, because those were like one-offs, but these kids nowadays, they expect to be here. They expect to be the guy that that they've always dreamed to be. And that's exactly what Anthony Volpe is going to be reliving today. I'm sure he didn't get much sleep last night.
No, of course not.
I'm sure he's already up, ready to go.
Yeah, right.
And he can't wait to get to the stadium. Their game's at 1:05, so I don't know what time they're responsible to be there, but I'm sure he's going to be there by 7 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, of course. And of course, yeah, the great ones, as you mentioned, the ones that can jump right in and be a factor right away are the ones that generally stick. And Anthony Volpe's, what he also does to this Yankee team? I've said this now for a while, but they've been a very stale group for the last couple of years. They just have been. And they got off to this great start last year, and that kind of shed some of that away. And they had all those all-stars, and they had the best record in baseball, the best team in baseball. That's what I was saying. You were saying the Astros are the best team in baseball. You were right about that. And then the way that it ended, they felt stale again. Then in the offseason, you're calling for, a lot of Yankee fans calling for Brian Cashman to be gone. A lot of Yankee fans calling for Aaron Boone to be gone. A lot of Yankee fans say trade Gleyber Torres. They don't do any of that stuff. They bring back Boone. They bring back Cashman. Gleyber Torres is there. Josh Donaldson's still there. Aaron Hicks is still there. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is still on the roster, even though he's not starting. So this team was stale. Anthony Volpe gives that energy. He injects that energy and freshness into a team that really needs it. I mean, the Yankees right now are that old restaurant that used to be really good, but now you go in there and the floors aren't vacuumed, the wait staff is 90 years old, and the place is falling down where there's all new restaurants popping up in the area, and it's not, 1996 anymore when that restaurant was killing it. Yeah, that's what they've been.
They got a new chef right now at shortstop.
Exactly.
Most important position in baseball. We all know that. And it's great that it's a young kid and he's from here. That's what makes it even that much better. I mean, how do you not root for that kid? I'm a Met fan, but it's the same thing. Like, how do you not root for Aaron Judge?
Sure.
The only time I'm not rooting for those guys is when they're playing the Mets.
Yeah.
But, when Aaron was in the middle of his home run chase last year, when this kid now comes up here, how do you not root for a guy like that? That there's an innocence that is a part of this. This is not now Aaron Judge and Brandon Nimmo are going to find out what it means to get big contracts and show up and have expectations attached to you. It's great to have a great smile. It's great to go 100 miles an hour, but you're going to have to be productive, and you're going to have to continue to be productive, and you're going to have to be consistent. For Anthony Volpe, it's not that. Right now, it's living the dream. And I don't know. I'm pulling for this kid like you can't believe. I love when these kids come up and they are developed within the teams that draft them, like a Sauce Gardner or Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
You could say Daniel Jones, and you could say Saquon Barkley. You could say Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal. You could say Mekhi Becton. These are the guys that you want to see stay here for a long time. And, I've seen that for my hockey team. I think Islander fans have seen it for their hockey team. And I think Devil fans are starting to see it for their hockey team.
Yeah, the teams that win championships, for the most part, and we've seen teams go out and spend a ton on free agents, and the Mets are one of those teams. But generally, it's the guys that you draft and develop if you can get that core that leads you to a championship, because it's a lot easier to win when those guys pan out. I mean, especially in the NBA, when you draft guys and they pan out, it's a lot easier to win as opposed to trying to finagle some trade or free agency. So it's going to be exciting there at Yankee Stadium today. I think Volpe's going to be a huge part of that. Aaron Judge coming back and signing, and you're facing the team that was the main competition for the Yankees. That's going to be a storyline. But you mentioned the Judge pressure. And there's going to be pressure to live up to that contract, but I don't know if he's going to have more pressure than he had on him last year.
Well, he got booed in the playoffs.
He did get booed in the playoffs, and rightfully so, because that offense was terrible and they got swept by the Astros. But, I mean, this was a guy that went into that season, bet on himself, did not take that contract, and then ended up chasing history and doing it.
Was it like a year ago today or whatever date it was that they announced that they had made him an offer and he turned it down?
That's right.
Remember that whole fiasco of like ruining opening day?
That's right. It was, and he had to talk about it before the game and talk about it after the game and talk about it throughout the entire season. And all he did was go out there, break the American League home run record, and win the MVP. I mean, that's all he did after that, and then got the biggest deal that he could possibly get. So last year, I think there was more pressure. Of course, there's going to be pressure to perform with the big money, but you mentioned Brandon Nimmo before. That's a guy that I think has got some more pressure on him because he got a huge contract. Steve Cohen made sure he overpaid to bring him back. And Brandon Nimmo was one of those guys where it's like, hey, he's got a big smile on his face. He runs down to first after he gets hit. He sprints down to first. He's always positive, and everything was great. He's a
great teammate.
Great teammate.
You got to have guys like that on your team. The question is,
are they worth over $100 million?
Right, exactly. That's what it comes down to. I nobody doubts that he's a great teammate, and we love him as Met fans, and we love everything about him. Is 274, 16 home runs going to get it done this year?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, him staying healthy, getting on base is the biggest part of his game. And those are two things that if he could do that, then I'm fine with it. I don't need so much the power numbers. I need the on-base percentage. I need games played from him. And I need runs scored. Those are things.
You need steals.
And which is a possibility. And that's going to be another big thing. I think that steals is going to be one of those things that we're going to see an uptick in because of these new rules for a couple of reasons. And the pitch clock being that, the bigger bases being that, with more room to be able to slide into these bases, that's going to be a big thing. And this is going to be amazing to watch in the regular season. I'm very, very excited to see the pitch clock and how it affects and how the game and the adjustments that teams make. So this opening day is very, very exciting in that way more than others because I don't think we truly understand how drastic the game is going to look differently. We saw a couple of spring training things here or there, whatever. Now this is for real. The pitch clock is there, and this is going to change a lot.
It's on, man, and it's going to be on quickly. And for people that go to these games that haven't really watched or really haven't paid attention, I think if you're a Yankee fan today, what you're hoping for is, a nice little 5-1 win in about 2 hours and 30 minutes. That's what you're hoping for.
Especially in this weather.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get the hell out of there, you get a win, and then you can enjoy that with the day off tomorrow. But, all 30 teams are playing today.
Yeah.
Which is great. And I think they're, the fact that the Mets and the Yankees, obviously different times, are great because you get to watch both. And I don't know, man. I'm kind of excited, but I don't know what to expect. I can't predict anything right now for the Mets. I don't know where they are. I really don't, especially with the loss of Edwin Diaz. And I got to see how Buck Showalter kind of manages that part of the game. Edwin was 62 innings last year or something like that, and was virtually unhittable and was averaging almost 2 strikeouts every time he came out of the bullpen.
Yep.
I don't know how you can recreate that with guys that don't have his arm and his ability.
Yeah, you can't. And you could only hope that the back end of the bullpen is sufficient and you don't need it as much as you needed it last year. That's really what it comes down to. And, I'd love for them to win the division. I would, because winning the division is a huge deal. Is a huge deal. But, it's going to be very, very difficult. And, really, you upgrade a catcher with Navarez. You feel like you did that from last year with McCann and Nito's still here, of course. You lose your closer. You swap DeGrom, who barely pitched last year, for Justin Verlander, who won a Cy Young, who did not have a great spring. And then outside of that, you're talking about the same team. And Kodai Senga's a big one, but it's not like you're going to see, we're talking about the influx of Volpe and the youth. You're not really seeing that with the Mets right now. They're keeping those guys back. Vientos, Beatty, and Alvarez are not a part of the team right now.
At some point, they'll all be up here.
Yeah.
Just the nature of the game, the injuries. Somebody's going to get off to a bad start. Somebody's going to get DFA'd. You watch. Somebody will. And there's a lot of pressure on the Mets because the owner has expectations. And, when you walk into your manager's office and you go, hey, you got a $353 million salary structure here. We better start winning some games. I love Buck Showalter, love him to death, and think the world of him. But remember this. Often it has been said that he's never really had the support and the money spent. Remember, he spent all those years, in Baltimore and was able to get that team to be competitive, but they had lousy ownership. They wouldn't spend money. And when they did spend money, they spent it on the wrong guys. It was a mess. This is a completely different set of circumstances. No manager in the history of Major League Baseball has ever had the resources that Buck Showalter has at his fingertips, along with Billy Epler, the general manager. They have an owner that wants to win, and those two guys are the stewards of the team. And you think about pressure for a second. I mean, you have to make the playoffs. When you're spending this kind of money, you have to make the playoffs.
And the Mets do not have a history of making the playoffs in back-to-back years, very much so. They did it in 99 and 2000. They did it in 15 and 16. 99 and 2000, obviously, NLCS and then World Series, and then 15 and 16 World Series, and then get ousted in the wild card game. But it's not as if they're, perennially making the playoffs. So, this would be only the third time in their history that they've gone back-to-back in the playoffs, but they have to. And with all that money spent and all the pressure and the great Buck Showalter and everything that we talk about with this team, it's still arguable, and I think somewhat a very, very good point, that the Mets, pound for pound, might have the third best roster in the division.
I would just say this, with Verlander, Scherzer, assuming that their attitudes remain the same as they always have, you're always going to have a chance to win those games. And then Senga, of course, signing the big deal, the 5-year, $75 million deal. He's got a lot of pressure on him too. I mean, he's got a ton of pressure on him. And so I don't know if he realizes that, but there's going to be expectations that come along with him. Two players that I think mirror each other for their respective teams that I hope come back and have a year like he did last year, and the other one come back from injury and be the player that he was a couple of years ago is basically Jeff McNeil for the Mets and then DJ LeMahieu for the Yankees.
Yeah, and Jeff McNeil with a winning the batting title, just a huge player on this team and someone who was indispensable. And how many times do we talk about the difference between the Yankees and the playoffs and getting swept in the offense was the fact that you didn't have Benintendi, who was a contact guy, and you didn't have DJ LeMahieu, who was a contact guy, in the playoffs, both those guys being out.
That's why both those guys are really going to be key, and we all know that. And then the other thing is going to be the health of Stanton and the health of Judge. I would say the health of Starling Marte is big for us as the Met fan. That's the one guy that we all kind of tend to – we don't forget about him, but we don't really talk about him much. But when he's healthy and he's doing his thing.
Well, that was a key loss down the stretch.
Yes, he is basically the Energizer Bunny for the team.
Yeah. And
him and Nimmo, I guess.
Yeah, and when he went out, you saw the division slip through their fingers, and he comes back, and he's not totally healthy in the playoffs, but he still hits. So, yeah, having him healthy the entire year would be huge.
So here's the thing. We saw something last night, and we're going to get into it on the other side of this, but we saw something last night where a key player got hurt for a team that is now getting ready to go into the playoffs, just like Starling Marte got hurt.